Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show we have Eric Cruz. He's a psychedelic facilitator and essentially you're bringing people through psychedelic journeys in ways that they weren't expecting. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast today.
Yeah. So you're when I spoke to you first, it was like a super breath of fresh air. As you can see, I'm not a jovial and an exciting podcast host. So I want you to really carry the day here for me.
No problem, man. I feel like my grin is authentic, so I'll keep it burning.
Yeah, you're gonna actually smile. So tell us what you're working on.
Sure. Well, my main vocation is guiding people on deeply intentional rites of passage psychedelic experiences. My main medicine has been psilocybin for many years, sacramental and personal practice for 20, and then guiding people through arcs of journey for the last 5. And that includes, starting things off with a very robust assessment, looking at mental health considerations, medications that they're currently on, see if there's any contraindicators there, trauma considerations there to ensure that I am the right vehicle to be able to support that in safety and honoring their genuine needs. Then bring them through a process of preparation, getting ready for probably a month in advance, body, mind, spirit invitations, things to look at, rest, restoration, nutrition, well-being, creating spaciousness, intentionality, stepping into the process there, and learning how to navigate the terrain with emotional regulation, deeper things to consider. And then I guide them through a journey experience, very intimate, very powerful, here in our beautiful center in just north of Asheville, North Carolina, and supporting them through the medicine. I've learned a lot of different means upon which to do that: artistry of facilitation, instrumentation, compassionate presence, different types of things like fragrance and ecosystem stewardship. Bring them through that and then help to land the craft. What insights did you glean? What choices have you made? What have you forgiven, let go, reconciled? And how do you embody those revelations and insights into an active lifestyle? How do you change? How do you change now that you know what you know? How do you change how you move forward with yourself?
So you mentioned it was you were doing this in the context of like a major life change, right? So when do people come to you and when should people come to you?
Well, I think everybody at a different level, if you get real quiet, real still, real introspective, you're likely moving through some form of initiation. It is a type of moment where your body, your being is asking to perceive life from a different state of awareness. So it's not as focused on content, which I think is important. Mental health considerations, I want to work on this particular trauma, this particular wound, this particular shadow, get into those core aspects of that experience, do the metabolization of that experience and then change. Yet often what I feel like is often overlooked in how these medicines have been utilized since time immemorial is, how do I change the way that I perceive life itself? A different vantage, a more wider aperture, a more cohesive way of embracing a relationship with the world around me, interdependent, symbiotic. How do I align with my true, authentic sense of passions or affinities? And so by utilizing medicine to go into a deep excavation of the self and see what are the aspects of my own wounding, my own healing process, my own limitations or conditions that are stopping me from being my true, expansive, more sovereign self. And so that's where I try to welcome people in that kind of ancient, more holistic mindset of, we're not going there to diagnose symptoms and issues and just work on those. We're going in there to support you and perceiving life from a new vantage, new orientation, in which all those things, the ripple effect, is all those things are going to change. Relationships will change. Relationship to your history will change. How you perceive your life and future will change because you are now looking from a new point of view.
So this is the question I get a lot. I mean, I get it from some like a hard-charging entrepreneur folks. They're worried that, first off, this sounds a little too ephemeral, and simultaneously it sounds earth-shattering, right?
Yeah.
All the language, and I've been using the language and I understand the language now, but all the language like holding space, the medicine, etc., sounds a little bit too woo-woo. And then also sounds, and I would report this to anybody who asked. It's like, yeah, this is life-changing stuff. This will change the way you think. This will change the way you act. This will change the way you react to anxiety, etc. How do you tell that story to somebody who's going to be reticent? And I know that the obvious answer is you don't tell that story. But if you know you need to help somebody, how do you tell that story?
Yeah, it's a great question. Everybody is at a different, I guess, level of openness, and also their main channel of receptivity might be tuned in different ways. So you can talk about the neuroplastic effects of this medicine, how it expands your filtering system, your thalamus, which is your communication center, so you can perceive divergent perspectives, parallel perspectives that are normatively difficult to access because our normative default mode network, our sense of persona, has a very narrow, limited scope of what it feels is efficient, effective, taking past information to project in the future. So when that broadcast widens, you could, interface with the same challenges you've had, but you're having creative, dynamic, visionary conception around it because you just have a wider palette, lighter landscape. And then as you're making insights, as you're making new choices, then the neuroplasticity, the dendrites of your neuronal growth start to spread in new places. So now you're no longer stuck in the ruts of pattern thinking. You're now having alternative perspectives. And with anything else, they're actual growth. So you'll need to sustain that. That's why integration is so important. You'll need to come out of that, make some discerned decisions around lifestyle, follow up those insights with actions, leading from, insight to breakthrough is really about the embodiment process that comes after that. So you can take a scientific landscape and look at the research and demonstrate the efficacy from that space. As a ceremonialist, I think it's one thing that I think is really important that is often overlooked. And this is, again, my own particular advantage, is that this medicine is intelligent. It's not, I'm taking a very static compound and it's creating some kind of just visceral internal effect that's going to catalyze a difference of perspective. You're talking about fungus, for example, for psychedelics. It's the oldest kingdom on earth. It's 7 times more biomass than plants and animals combined. It is literally the nervous system of our planet. 99% of plants have a mycophilic relationship, meaning it depends on a fungal partner to nutrify it. We have flora and fungus all throughout our bodies that help to create homeostasis in our body. And so there is a genuine sense, and that's the difference, I think, from authentic indigenous ceremonialism, is that I'm in relationship with this medicine. I'm not extractive of this medicine. So by learning how to listen, attune to this medicine through the rigor of use over time and the artistry of facilitation and mentorship from other facilitators, then there's a way to support the use of this medicine in the ecosystem of a container to help to support your own growth. And that's the other factor, your body's healing intelligence. Also, if you get a cut here, it knows how to repair that. Similar to wounds of the mind, only you know what you have to forgive, what you have to change, what you have to confront to heal those contractions in the mind, those restrictions in the mind. It'll support that by navigating to those spaces, presenting them to you, and then you use your own choice to move through. But that's why it's so universally applicable to PTSD and depression and addiction and OCD and all other aspects, is because of its malleability, the personal choice that's associated with it, and I believe its intelligence.
Yeah, that's a fascinating idea. I mean, there's always been the idea that the mycelial network is sort of like mimics the brain. You've been doing this for a while. So what do you think has been some of the benefits that you've felt?
Well, I think some of the benefits are, again, it's come back to that orientation of like, one, it's very easy to get rigid in pattern thinking, and that can be really set from, you're indoctrinated in school systems, you grow up in a particular type of culture, so you have your own mores, own kind of set pattern beliefs, depending on where that is, parentage, growing up in particular orientations of what relationships should look like, what is right or wrong, and a lot of times these programs, especially the deeper they go back, they're set into your system. But as you grow and emerge and start to experience different things, often there's a dissonance. You're gaining some insight into potential other ways of navigating life, be it spiritual, be it scientific, be it exploratory. There's a lot of things that occur. And then this is rubbing against friction of a lot of the conditioned behavior that's underneath. And whether you have big T traumas, little T traumas, or just certain ways of perceiving life, often it's very hard to target those aspects, even through psychotherapy, talk therapy, working it through, because of how embedded they are in the psyche from really early childhood, even perinatal birthing experiences, teenage, adolescent rebellion. And so often people come and are like, I don't understand why it's difficult for me to change my ways, although I'm intellectually understand it, emotionally understand it, but there's some entrenchment in my reactive behaviors, my kind of pattern behaviors that I can't seem to touch. And one of the powerful things about psychedelics is it does tend to move to those more core essential places that are beneath the conscious barrier that you can naturally navigate to. And then it could show you, you have five generations of machismo, 5 generations of like really assertive, aggressive, dominant, masculine behavior. That is hard to break just by willing it. You often need some kind of support within there that can identify it. You can name it. You can choose something about it. And then afterward, rarely is it, 100% you are, clear, no issues. I mean, there are some wild things that can happen, revelatory things that happen. But then at least you have an imprint. You're able to identify these are the nature of the things that are truly creating dissonance for me. So now I can target them actively through therapy, contemplation, meditation, support groups, whatever those things are. So it helps to unearth where that baggage is, and then it allows you to move through a process of healing and transformation with it.
What do you say to folks who have that sense that they need to change, but are afraid to do that change? I mean, I think the machismo that you're talking about is obvious. Yeah. I don't know, a relationship kind of situation, or your relationship with substance.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I often think about, even in terms of letting go of things, people talk about often surrender, letting go. And I believe personally, there's intention that can come behind letting go. But very much like the fruit ripening on the tree, sometimes letting go doesn't happen until like the ecosystem is genuinely set and you have arrived to a place of internal maturity where the risk of staying the same becomes greater than the mystery of letting go. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I think is hard often is like, this relationship, I could feel its toxicity. I could feel its restriction. I could feel how I'm not content or aligned, and there's sorrow here and dissonance, or this coping strategy with this addiction. It is supporting me through things that I feel I'm overwhelmed by. I don't have genuine agency and capacity to deal with the intensity of this challenge, so I need this ally to support me through this. But at a certain point, very much like the battered wife, very much like, you become in this neurotic coping loop, you start to perceive there's so much pain and so much rut in staying this way that somewhere inside of me is just saying, yes, it's scary to step into the mystery. Yes, it is challenging to move from the unknown, to go from a place of intuition where there's no plan, no strategy, no roadmap. Only within yourself can you figure that out. But I know this other way creates suffering. It creates dissonance. It is disrupting family. It is disrupting things I love. And so often it is that breaking point when people step in the medicine or they're coming there. It's like, I have exhausted this path. And although my mind will try to convince me, hey, at least you know it, at least you can, something else is drawing that muse out to say, at least if I step into this alternate perspective way of being, I have more data. I have more to work with here to ensure that I am being honest and earnest about healing and change. And yeah, it can be scary, but sometimes it's scarier to stay the same.
Is there anything you've learned from facilitating, working with folks on the medicine that can be done and changed without taking the medicine? Is there any takeaways here that we can use that say you don't need to take 4 grams, you can just do this?
Yeah, well, I always consider like the immersive path, of psychedelics is like, it's like dunking you in the 8-foot side of the pool. You're getting that deep dunk inside, and then you're getting the drip dry. So it is like going to this really powerful catalytic experience where, you're going to confront, experience, numerous things that are alive in the psyche, from past remembrances to visionary possibilities to a real internal look at the integrity of how you're living, how you're coping, dealing, working through things. And so it often creates what I call an imprint. You can't unknow what you know. So after you come out of experience, like, okay, I have a clear line of sight toward things I want to maintain and hold because they feel authentic to me, and things that really got to go. And then I got to work on those things and change. Now, other pathways, I am a big proponent of Vedic meditation and contemplation work. It is slow, steady, patient progression along a path of what I call purification, more so. What is truly aligned? What is virtuous action? Am I holding myself accountable to that? Am I acting in integrity when people are watching or not watching? How do I process through emotions? Things like don't run away from your feelings. If you are having a big sorrowful day, then who are you to judge that that's a happy day is better? Your body is going to cue you into what is important for it to experience in order to feel whole. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing is lately, I tune into the medicine from time to time, but probably far less than people would think as a facilitator, is allowing myself opportunities to confront and be with shadow, be with wounds, and rest in the discomfort. And be with the discomfort and use that as an opportunity to get real clear. What is the lesson plan? What is pain trying to reveal to me? What is this happening here? And so that can be metabolized with medicine, or microdosing can support that, small incremental amounts that could create just more capacity in many ways. But really all it's asking you to is to remember your center, go back to your origin place, beyond conditions, limitations, these things. And there's numerous paths to get there, through breath, through movement, through meditation, through different types of ritual. They're just longer, patient pathways that often in the homeowner style life in the West, we often don't dedicate or devote enough time to that and put that front and center.
Well, this has been a pretty wide ranging. When should people reach out to you? When do you think somebody's ready to go do something down in Asheville or wherever?
Yeah, well, I think curiosity is a really important component. There are things that, mental health wise, if you're dealing with particular types of challenges, I think damn near everybody's got some depression, anxiety right now. And if you feel that you're particularly stuck on being able to access those spaces and you want to do an honest reveal and a supportive, held way, it's a very powerful vehicle to do that. Yet I feel like there's also a deep drive for individuation, people trying to really discover what is the best, most aligned expression of myself. And that can be about spiritual discovery. That can be about developmental discovery, a mixture of both. But that's also another powerful reason. Psychedelics isn't just for those that are suffering, those that are dealing with mental health. It can also be a very powerful vehicle, personal self-discovery, personal exploration, affirmation of values, of virtues, of things that you really represent, restoration of wonder. I think that's one of the more valuable aspects of our life, is like just a curiosity and wonder about why we're here, what we're doing, what's possible. And so all these are valid reasons to step into this work. I think it's just always important to realize that this is it could be a very powerful and major step, but it is a step in a progressive journey. It is a step in your hero's journey. So you never want to just push all your dice, all your chips in and say, I need this to work in desperation, nor do you, look at it and say, like, this is my one ticket to having a visceral spiritual experience. Just embracing it as part of a continuum of your own growth is important. But yeah, this can be the medicine can be a very powerful opportunity to just know yourself in a more authentic and deep way, and then find ways to support that with community. I mean, there's a very rich, powerful, open community here too, of fellow seekers and fellow people that are just ready to support the betterment of humanity.
Cool. Where can people find out what your work?
So you can tune into my website. It's the Spark, THESPARC.co. I also often share stories and things like that on LinkedIn. That's probably my main portal in terms of socials there. So those are two main vehicles there. You can learn about our retreat center, programs and offerings, or, just connect and see if I can be an ally on your path.
Aaron, thank you for this. It's been really helpful.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me on.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.